Hello, passengers, and welcome aboard the TV pilot's license with service to Philadelphia and Mr. Feeny's classroom. We ask that you please fasten your headphones, secure your podcasting device, and remember that today is pizza day! In the cafeteria. I mean, in the in-flight meal. But if you're in economy, I have terrible news. You get a piece of vending machine fruit, and you will have to like it.
Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Geoff Kerbis, joined by Rich Inman and Max Singer. How you boys doing today?
Jeff, I've got some bad news because of how much Philadelphia Phillies coverage is in today's episode. I'm already a no.
Rich, how are you?
Well, I was going to ask you to pull the flight attendant card up to me so I could ask for a glass of water.
Well, boys, this week we are going back to school. Maybe a little bit late, but maybe just on time.
That's right. If you haven't pieced this together yet, in West Philadelphia.
Oh, no.
You get 3 more words before we get sued.
Yeah, exactly. Will Smith is on his shit right now, and DJ Jazzy Jeff. But we are actually taking it back to a Thank God It's Friday or a TGIF classic of Boy Meets World. But before we do so, Max, do you mind telling folks what this podcast is all about?
Here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We learn a little bit more about how these shows came to be and were originally made, if they're effective pilot episodes and making us want to watch more, and if we think they can be made today. Go back and stream our old episodes from wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on YouTube and TikTok to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us, then welcome aboard.
And Rich, what is your question of the week this week?
Oh, yeah. So, as you guys know, this show was not immune to the reboot boom of the last several years with the Boy Meets World reboot coming out. And I want to know, because I think one of my favorite reboots or reboot premises is comedy to gritty. Take one show from your childhood or from, that you were going to reboot as a gritty TV show and give me the rundown. How about
Max,
you, Max? You look ready.
Yeah, what are you thinking?
Well, I think we've got to go with the mature adult Hey Arnold, but we're not talking about the kids. We're focusing just on the life stories of the people who live in the boarding house. So this is a gritty reboot. We're focusing just on basically the same things from it. We're focusing on immigration stories. We're focusing on family values, having to mentor small children who run amok and have the nicest apartment in your building. But yeah, we're focusing just on the adults of Hey Arnold, Prestige TV, BBC minisode series, kind of like 4 episodes, and we are sweeping the Emmys with this.
I'm watching that. I shit on reboots a lot. Just because it feels like a cash grab, but shit, I would watch that.
Thank you. We've already got Hugh Laurie signed on as Mr. Pakashka.
Oh my god. Rich, this had me thinking a lot because I was just like, what hasn't been done, right? Because like even something like Sabrina the Teenage Witch has been redone by Netflix, and it was done really well. And then I was really thinking like, okay, what else hit that spot? What else like really is something that maybe I'd be interested in? And it's Clarissa Explains It All.
Okay.
Clarissa Explains It All, I think, is just one of those shows that with Melissa Joan Hart also, surprisingly, maybe I'm just a Melissa Joan Hart stan, but like it's one of those things where I could see a gritty version of this show very, very easily. There's some dark tones and notes that could easily be thrown into the show of giving advice and maybe it not hitting in a childish comedic way every single time.
Is Clarissa Explains It All potentially the lead into Sex and the City? Is it personal diary blog leading into Sex and the City? Could that be? And
just like that, Rich found the bridge.
Yeah, shit, they already had a reboot.
Oh my gosh. Rich, what about yourself? What is your gritty reboot?
I want you guys to close your eyes because I painted a picture with this one. All right. The network's up his ass. The cast is falling apart. The writers are high and the crew is drunk. Even worse, the show goes on in 90 minutes. There's only one man who could take this rambunctious group from nothing to stardom. Jim Henson. Can you, this fall, can you tell us how to get to Sesame Street? Coming to theaters near you.
I don't know what to say. That's wild, man. That is literally insane. Well, Rich, thank you so much for that question of the week. Let's talk a little bit more about Boy Meets World, but before we do so, a quick synopsis. An adolescent with two siblings tests his various theories about life as he endures the trials of growing up alongside a good friend, which, for a pilot, and maybe for folks who are remembering this show, that actually does a great job of explaining the pilot that we watched. But, Max,
is that the synopsis for the pilot or for the whole show?
That is the synopsis for the entire show, which is really interesting. And Max, I feel like there's a little bit more that went on behind the scenes to make this a reality.
Yeah, you boys ready to talk TGIF?
Damn right.
Yeah, always.
All right. So in 1965, Alan Stillman opened the first TGI Fridays restaurant in Manhattan. He lived on 63rd Street between 1st and York Avenues. Today
Did you know TGI Fridays was opened as a place for like essentially singles to go like eat appetizers and hit on each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think that hits real hard.
Yeah, I want some jalapeno poppers, and I want your number.
I want some jalapeno poppers that have just been microwaved and are cold on the inside but hot on the outside.
God, I want to go to the 1965 TGI Fridays on 63rd so bad.
You can, Max. It's current Barney's Beanery.
Today, we are talking about the pilot of Boy Meets World, which aired on September 24th, 1993 on ABC. We're talking about the show's creators, Michael Jacobs and April Kelly, a little bit. Michael Jacobs begins his writing career in the late 70s as a playwright in New York City before moving into the sitcom world with Charles in Charge, Dinosaurs, and My Two Dads. One of these starred dinosaurs, the other starred comedian Paul Reiser and Dick Butkus.
Yo! I forgot he tried to make an acting pivot. That is amazing.
Bears fans, let us know if you want us to do My Two Dads with Paul Reiser and Dick Butkus.
If you promise that you'll listen, we'll do it 100%.
April Kelly started off as a writer on Happy Days and Mork and Mindy. In the late 80s, she took a break from Hollywood to practice homeopathic medicine and returned to TV in 1993 as the co-creator of today's show. While working on Dinosaurs at ABC, a fixture of the network's TGIF lineup for a period, Jacobs went to the network with a simple pitch. All these family-friendly sitcoms like Growing Pains and Family Ties focus on older siblings. What about middle children and youngest children? It would be a show that dealt with the real world in a way that spoke to kids, but in true sitcom fashion, the pilot focused more on the dynamic of what if a middle schooler lived next to his principal? The network and Jacobs battled on how to balance the mature elements with it being a show about 12-year-olds. ABC cut all references to Shakespeare originally in this pilot and felt the content was too heavy for their intended audience of 12 to 14-year-olds. The show was originally panned at its table read, with William Daniels, Mr. Feeny, threatening to quit over the way the pilot mocked teachers. Jacobs claims he rewrote the entire pilot that night.
Whoa.
Wow.
The changes worked, with the show earning a 22-episode first-season run, becoming a cornerstone in the latest iteration of ABC's TGIF lineup. Today's pilot is directed by John Tracy, a longtime multicam sitcom director, best known for helming 134 of the 166-episode run of Growing Pains.
Holy shit.
Okay, so if you had to guess, how mean towards teachers was this original script? Because like they make Feeny look like an outcast, obviously, but like even then, he's still respected, I guess, by his other teachers. He's just an adult. It's the adult like student relationship.
I mean, this is such an interesting show in the idea of thinking about the time slot and thinking about TGIF, right? Like, for those who aren't familiar, who are listening to this podcast and are like,
I'm personally not familiar. I do not remember watching this.
I think it's important to talk about what the purpose of TGIF it was, because current days, if your show is scheduled for Fridays during normal primetime hours, that's a death sentence to your show. Normally that means, hey, the network doesn't really believe in it, or they'd rather just show reruns of something that used to be a hit.
That was the same bag that SNL had. It was like, who the hell wants midnight on Saturday night as a TV show slot?
But like TGIF was meant for the entire family. And that was the unique thing about it. And Max, what were your thoughts like about watching this more as a TGIF show versus watching it as a pilot like we normally do?
I think it's fascinating going back and thinking about a network in 2024 giving a primetime slot regardless of day and all the advertising money that comes with primetime TV slots to a show that centers on sixth graders. And this is the second TGIF show I believe we've done now. We have covered Hanging with Mr. Cooper, a show that aired in the same block at the same time as Boy Meets World. And it's fascinating the gambit that ABC took where they were like, hey, we used to have all these shows back in the 60s and even into the 70s, things like Ozzie and Harriet, and then into the Flintstones, the Brady Bunch, Partridge Family, shows that were about family dynamic. And they kind of leaned back into it really heavily starting in the late 80s, and it took off just stratospheric in the 90s. And I cannot imagine in today's landscape a network investing in an 11-year-old lead and in an 11-year-old's coming of age story and saying this deserves a primetime slot, and we trust that people are going to tune in because, oh boy, they tuned in. This was not something that had the benefit of reruns and streaming. People stayed home and tuned in. And I think they found that market of there are families here and they have children and they want to be able to watch things together, and they did it in a way that no one's been able to replicate since.
And that's the other thing that I want to point to, and Rich, this is a very roundabout way of answering your question, right?
Yeah.
Of the job of this pilot is not only to make sure that it is entertaining enough for the adults in the room to like get some of the jokes because a lot of the comedy in this episode was towards adults, in all honesty. Like, I was surprised by the end of it, but you have to make this relatable enough that imagine you have two children, hypothetically, and let's just say they're the ages of 6 and 12, right? A little bit of an age gap, but you need it to be engaging enough for those two children that they're not screaming to change the channel or watch something else. And that's why you need to sort of make fun of the teacher or make the teacher a little bit of an outcast, because how is a kid going to relate to someone who's in their mid-40s?
It's half and half.
But for the adults, and I think this is the importance of bringing in someone like John Tracy to do this pilot, is that it looks just like a multicam sitcom.
Yes, it does.
I want you to think about children's TV, or we talk about like kids' TV shows today, the stuff that we see from a Nickelodeon, a Disney. We've mentioned, there was Girl Meets World, the stuff that Netflix puts out. They are so bright. They have a very particular look and style to them, and they feel like kids' TV shows. This looks the same as every other multicam sitcom that came out in 1993. And I think that's so important that it doesn't talk down. It doesn't sugarcoat. It doesn't put on this broad fake landscape to be a kids' TV show. It's just a sitcom. And it really did make a difference in my experience watching this as someone who is like 20 years older than the leads.
So go ahead,
sorry.
Rich.
Do you think, since this is like the overall feel for this show, it feels like, oh, we want like a family bonding TV thing? Is this like, do you think that there's like kind of some like Christian elements behind this with like, we want family oriented TV in the same way that like, the Bushes railed against the Simpsons and wanted TV to look more like the Waltons.
Counterpoint to your Christian argument, because this guy also created a show about dinosaurs.
Yeah. And like, in all honesty, like in a non-joking answer, of all of the TGIF
I can't
shows,
wait to see that on Instagram next week.
Of all of the TGIF shows that exist, this is probably the one that least centered itself in faith, in all honesty, because there are other figures that are used as that moral compass rather than being like, Jesus or like going
it's not
to church
in your face like Seventh Heaven or some shit like that, but it's just like it feels very like, oh, we need something
but
specifically family friendly, which is like, I don't know, feels strange.
You need to have TV, and let's dive into this episode a little bit. We need to have TV for TGIF. Like, it is for the entire family. A family wants to feel good by the end of the episode that they have gained something as a whole, and it's moral-centered TV, which, like, now we make fun of because we watch a bunch of shows that, like, by the end, the characters are worse off or just neutral to where they started. This is very much, by the end of the episode, we're going to learn something, and our hearts are going to feel a little bit bigger, not because of a disease, but because we feel good about them. And this show starts off with a cafeteria scene. And one of the first notes that I have is, while the jokes are made for adults and made for kids, they almost make school feel like it's a workplace comedy, which is really, really interesting to me. Yes, we do have that work. We have these children who are talking to each other like they're around a water cooler when they're in the cafeteria, talking about how late they stayed up based off of how much they got through an unnamed late night show being hosted by someone. And I'm just going to assume it's Conan O'Brien because I want it to be Conan O'Brien.
Little early. I mean, this is definitely Carson. They make a reference to the
93.
They make a reference to, or maybe little, but they make a reference to the singer and comedian Steve Lawrence, who actually just passed away a few months ago, who was this, like, you know, husband and wife song and dance comedy sketch kind of duo in the 1950s and 60s, like very vaudeville-y late night fixture. And the fact that these, 11-year-old kids are so passionate about Steve Lawrence is so funny to me.
This is like extremely relatable for me, though. I remember like being proud of like if I stayed up for the Daily Show when I was in school and stuff like that.
When I was in sixth grade, I petitioned my parents to push my bedtime back by 30 minutes so I could watch the Drew Carey Show. I understand these kids.
Wow,
the Drew Carey Show.
Wow, Cleveland really rocks.
Yeah, I'm glad your taste has really become elevated, Max. But
whoa. Absolutely no Drew Carey slander on this podcast.
I'm about to log out.
I think that this... Did you guys get the same feeling that this first scene does do a good job of establishing both the jokes for the kids of like, oh my God, you stayed up late, but also... I don't think any kid really is thinking about Carson, right? When they're talking about like their nighttime. That is shooting for the rafters and very much shooting for the adults who are watching this show.
100%. Yeah, this is the Grandpa and Rugrats part of the show. It is very much for the adults in the room.
But
I loved it though.
We get the kids around the lunch table, so we get that dynamic established early on up top, and we get the first like mentor-mentee relationship scenes with the introduction of Mr. Feeny.
Yeah, and I mean, we get our intro. We are robbed of the theme song that I remember for this show, in all honesty. But that's fine. We get our title card. We get our 90s montage.
Number one complaint about hosting a podcast just on TV pilots is how many theme songs we miss out on.
Oh, 100%. You want that classic theme song? You're not fucking getting it. Like, go and fuck yourself. You're not going to be hearing it. I know this is a children's show. I still was upset. But I did like the idea of just that quintessential like 90s montage where rather than like seeing bits of the show, we get like the kids who are going like right. A lot of arm crossing, a lot of like winking and nodding to the camera, and I'm all about it. Like
we have 3 hours to shoot this title card. Get in there and give us nothing.
Oh man, I know a Gap store hate to see those kids coming.
Wow. So some real Oshkosh bagosh behavior.
I mean, we get this interaction with Mr. Feeny, but I really love this pilot because of William Daniels. I think that while we have Cory as our main protagonist of the show revolves around Cory, there's something very different and elevated about the performance that William Daniels gives of this educator of elementary school students, and watching him have to deal with Cory being an asshole and listening to the Phillies broadcast in the game, which would have been solved if he just had AirPods. Why was this made in the 90s?
It's that William Daniels doesn't play this like kids' TV that makes this show effective.
100%.
You have to play the role of Feeny as the adult figure. You have to play it so grounded. And I feel like we lose that in what has become kids' TV now, where the adult figures have to be buffoonish because we're catering to the children. And it's like, yeah, Feeny could have jokes, Feeny could have gags, but he has to play it as the straight man as much as possible to let Cory be the goof and to be the protagonist. And it's just kind of a lost thing today.
Yeah, it's almost like the dad in Fresh Prince having to, like, he can't just be like a, oh gosh, father figure kind of thing. Like, my kids are crazy, that kind of thing. He had to be the, I'm gonna shit talk my kids every now and then because I'm the man of the house and this is how I'm running things. And it is, I really do like the fact that they made him not necessarily palatable for kids, but like very understandable in that, like, the thing that keeps teachers going, I assume, because it is such a drastically underpaid and undervalued job, has to be the fact that their passion for what they're actually teaching. And Feeny has a lot of passion for what he's teaching, in spite of his children. In spite of the children, it's like, you're going to learn, but you may actually you might do it accidentally. Like, you may actually love this thing accidentally.
What did we think of having such an simple A plot for this episode? Because sometimes we talk about our plots that are, why is this day different than any other day? And it's like, oh yeah, we're solving the world economic crisis. And this is as simple as, we have a detention and Cory doesn't get to go to the Phillies game with his brother, who got a date with his crush and is taking his ticket to give to the crush.
Yeah.
Like, nice and refreshing, or maybe a little bit too simplistic for you, Rich?
I thought it was, I think that's kind of on the money for being simplistic. It's like, if you want the parents to love and relate to Mr. Feeny, you have to have a plot that is easy enough for the kids to follow along with. And that's like, boy, it doesn't get any easier than that. Also, I absolutely love that of the pilots that we've done recently, we get a John Kruk reference in this instead of Arliss. So that made me laugh.
Max, what about you?
I think you can't go any more complicated than this. We need to see a plot that challenges Cory and his mentor's dynamic, and a plot that challenges Cory and his family's dynamic. We get both those things. You don't want to go too deep for your 12 to 14-year-old audience. It's as simple as, Cory's having a bad day. What does he learn from this?
So this show does, as I said, it revolves around Cory. It revolves around, and as our synopsis said, Cory trying to make his way through the world as an adolescent child, trying to learn lessons along the way, being influenced from everyone by his parents to mentors to his siblings as well. And what do we think of seeing Cory's life, or seeing life through the eyes of Cory as our protagonist? Is he valuable? Is he someone that you feel like, as a grown man, you can relate to too?
I personally don't think children have value. No, I'm kidding. I do
put it on the TikTok.
I do believe that he got Bart Simpsonified a little bit. Like, they wanted to make him the bad boy, and obviously 93, like, I don't think the Simpsons were ever as popular as they were in 93. And I think they do. They're like trying to make him palatable, but also like kind of like a bad kid, or not bad kid, but like he's going to be set on his own path, and he thinks he knows best. And I guess that is like kind of how kids are anyways. But like, I think they Bart Simpsonified him a little bit, you know, probably eventually to a fault, but like I definitely related a lot of like questioning authority and like wanted to do my own thing, and the lessons learned in that. So I thought they did a pretty decent job with this. But yeah, definitely had some cowabunga dude in Cory a little bit.
I like that they have the family shout out another TGIF show in
I
this
know.
pilot when they make a reference to watching Full House. I don't know. I feel like
They also make fun of it.
Yeah, they make fun of Full House. This is actually the ABC Disney precursor to Deadpool and Wolverine, where it's just going to be meta jokes.
This is it's like in Studio 60. I don't know if you actually watched the pilot, Max, when we did it that week, but Studio 60 references Saturday Night Live.
Yes,
which is so stupid.
They exist in the same universe.
But yeah, it is very much like. So does that mean they're Mad TV? Sorry. But yeah, I was truly. I didn't take a ton of notes for this show. I just wanted to like see how it felt. Mostly because, like, I don't know, we're not going to get so deeply into the actual plot of it, but like it felt weird that they self-referenced another show that they're kind of like competing or adjacent with.
Well, I mean, at the same time, you're trying to, well, we might find it meta because maybe the overexistence of meta content in our society currently, like at the time you are trying to relate to, oh, they're just a regular American family, right? Maybe out in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and they watch Growing Pains just like us, or they watch Full House just like us.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, one of the things that this show does, and I think that Cory acts although he's very Bart Simpson, Cory acts as a vessel for us to learn a lot of different lessons in this episode. And I think there's two really large ones that we get, and one is the idea of evolving whom gets your attention. And this was actually a moment where like Cory's mom gives this really nice speech about like the idea of playing catch with his dad and how he used to like value doing that. And we do get it comes to a close with this really adorable moment with Cory's little sister, Morgan, which was I crying a little bit watching a TGIF show? Yes, I was. But I think that it was a really interesting use of, normally when we have our protagonist or our vessel, they're boring. Cory isn't that. Cory is causing the chaos around him rather than having actors around him cause the chaos, which is interesting. Like it's different for sure.
Yeah, I think he's a protagonist where you watch him go through the steps and things are inflicted upon Cory, and he absorbs that and he reacts to that, and it does make him an interesting character because you're going to be able to put him in any situation, and it's going to be how does he react to this new situation. There may be episodes where he drives the action, but you know that he's always going to be reacting to things. Mentioning The Simpsons and knowing some of the plot of today's pilot, I really would have thought that treehouses would have played a larger part of my youth because it feels like every single 10, 11-year-old boy in 1983 had a treehouse. Was I missing out on something here?
Max, the kids these days will never know the joy of treehouse ownership because treehouses are unaffordable in Biden's America.
Is it a zoning thing? Like, are we not able to cut through the red tape to get a tree home built?
That's right. You have to pay money to the treehouse HOA, and it's such a pain in the ass.
And those are run by the Keebler elves, correct?
That's right. And Los Angeles just refuses to build more treehouses. You know what I mean? It's just so upsetting.
Oh my God, you two are idiots. Let's talk about
elections matter, people.
We talked a little bit about the idea of lessons. There's one very large monologue that we get in this pilot done by Mr. Feeny in detention when Cory almost thinks he has this gotcha moment of like, I gotcha, you got turned down on a date and you had to eat dinner alone. First of all, living next to your student, probably an utter goddamn nightmare.
Dude, like, I could not imagine.
But
the teachers right now are so worried about their students finding them on social media that's been like the biggest source of fear of any teacher that I know for like the last decade. It's like there are so many young kids. It's not like they're teaching college. Like It is. You have to hide yourself, and that is like that. What a massive burden of privacy
and adolescents are ruthless too. Like teachers have to constantly live with just existing outside of school walls because in the youth mind, you're just stuck in this building, and you don't exist as a human outside of it. So that we get this, voyeurism from Cory that results in this pseudo gotcha moment is the lowest stakes version of what actual teachers have to deal with and fear of repercussion
100%.
from their students.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a beautiful way of turning this like nasty moment from Cory into a lesson. Like Mr. Feeny is literally a walking, these are the lessons of life. This is why we put so much value on the concept of love. Great to know as an 11-year-old, you think you have it all figured out. You fucking don't. And that's the purpose of the show.
And by God, to aim this show at 12-year-olds and to have this elder statesman character say things like the strength is a family and what makes them powerful and the unlimited potential of what may come from that love. I mean, good God, that's what roots this pilot. Like
the
that
cult
is
of Feeny.
but it is. It's if you don't have Mr. Feeny, and if you don't have someone who is as experienced and willing to play it with the gravitas of William Daniels, you don't get this show. You get some version of it, but it's certainly not Boy Meets World.
Definitely.
100%. And I mean, the way that this show ends is we do see Cory become slowly but surely, episode by episode, we know he's going to become a better person with this adorable tea party scene with his younger sister and taking responsibility of that mentorship of being the big brother after playing the role and still being a little brother, but being able to understand that he has to be a part of his family. He has to give. He has to be able to take at the same time. It was a really nice way to end the episode.
I think there's two really nice lessons that really build up this pilot here. Number one, that kids, like individual kids watching this, realize that they are more important than they think, and for reasons that are different from what they think. That's wonderful. Like it's the family unit strength and everything. But also the teachers are people too element of it, I think really builds it really builds something that kids can learn from. It is something that like it is very obvious to to make that I'm sorry, it's not so obvious for kids in what you were saying, Max, about the like teachers existing outside of school element, but it really does set the tone for like, oh, we're actually going to see some like real like character building, some real relationship building in this pilot. It's not just kid says funny thing, adult is like, that kind of thing. It's not that element. It's super like there is going to be an actual mentoring relationship between the two of them.
So that sort of is our pilot. I'd love to hear things that you loved about this pilot that maybe we didn't discuss in more depth. I'm going to selfishly start with, I think that the stinger of this episode was one of my favorite that we've ever had on this podcast, of Mr. Feeny just loudly bragging about how he did not get stood up for a date. It was his sister, and like leaving that air of mystery for the students. And he's like, and even saying like, you have to leave them with just enough doubt that they don't know what your real life is. Mm-hmm. Like it was jokes like that. And also like, all the credit in the world to the Morgan character. Like when you can get a child actor that just nails their role, like there's nothing cuter in the world. There's 100%. Nothing cuter than having a little girl absolutely nail a tea party. And like, was I cracking up when she did the pretend ketchup? Yes, I was. I was losing my mind. But like, that was, I think that's sort of the beauty of a TGIF show, is you can have those moments and they don't feel out of place. They feel like they fit perfectly. Max, what about yourself?
Two just kind of close to home ones. One, quite literally, the exterior shot of their middle school is John Marshall High School, which is right near where I live in Los Angeles. So I was really excited to recognize that. Also, I did not know that this was cast by Allison Jones, who was responsible for every major comedy film and sitcom of close to the last 30 years now. One of the biggest names in casting, has single-handedly made so many careers of comedic actors that you know and love.
Oh, yeah.
And knowing that she was involved in this and had a hand, it just gave me an appreciation again for how seriously they take this despite the subject age group.
Rich, what about yourself?
I love 90s Phillies references and shows. Let's keep that going. I want to hear more. Well, I don't know. He kind of turned out to be a dirtbag. Maybe a little less Lenny Dykstra, a little more John Kruk.
Oh my gosh. And I mean, as far as wait a minute moments, I'm curious if you have any. Really, like, my only wait a minute moment is teachers' jobs are hard enough. Children should be, like, at least be a net.
It's a show, Geoff.
I understand, but like I'm just saying for life. Like I'm taking myself out of the TV sphere. I'm taking myself out of a TV podcast. Like I literally have a friend who's a teacher here in Minnesota, and she tells me she on her Instagram posts the photos, the bad drawings that kids make of her, or I heard myself called this nickname today, and shit. I'm just like, my dear God, like they don't pay you enough for this nonsense. So like this is more of a PSA of like, if you have a student in school, just ask, how's the teacher doing? They might feel a lot better if they get that question.
Dog, yeah. Every teacher's gift for Christmas should be alcohol. That's
Rich, what about you? Any wait a minute moments for this episode?
I think that it's kind of the downfall of any show that has kids in it. It's that the quips from kids sound like they're written by a 40-year-old screenwriter. So I'm like, oh, this child talks like a 40-year-old screenwriter. I'm like, there's no way you know who Steve Lawrence is. I'm sorry. It is like, it's a little unrelatable from the kid's perspective. It does feel more, because no one's talking about like kid stuff really in the show. It's like, yeah, you're really into the Phillies, but like, you know who's also really into baseball? 40-year-old dudes who write TV. So it's like, it's hard to separate that. But yeah, it is very much like this kid sounds like a 40-year-old screenwriter feeling.
Max, what about yourself?
Are the 40-year-old dudes who are writing the show going to address the 1993 Philadelphia Phillies losing the World Series? I need to find out.
Stay tuned for episode 2.
I think this is also just one of those things where being, a generation kind of removed from the show and this era, even hearing Cory's brother talk about going downtown to go to the Phillies game by himself on a date when he's a sophomore in high school, that feels crazy to me. Like, I can't imagine getting that privilege in today's kind of, caution era. But good for him. I wish I could have gone to a baseball game on a date when I was a sophomore in high school.
Every year we used to raise money by walking from our school to Wrigley for a game. That was like, it's a little bit more protected, but it was definitely a lot more fun. And yeah, I wish everyone could have that.
Oh my gosh. Well, we did get a really good in-flight question that I want to share with you guys from Instagram. And it says, Mr. Feeny serves as a wise adult to teach the group lessons. And out of school, who was your personal Mr. Feeny? I'm going to actually sort of edit this because I want to allow you guys, if you have someone who is in school or outside of your family that was a mentor to you, who were they? Give them a little bit of shine on this podcast.
I wish I remembered this particular teacher's name because he was very cool. I was a pretty emotional kid when I was, when I was trying new things. If I was like, I would get upset if I failed at something in baseball, and that baseball is to teach you a lot of lessons on how to deal with failure. But my piano teacher at the church nearby, at some point eventually wouldn't let me get upset with myself if I made a mistake while I was during a lesson or something like that. Like if it's something I was trying to drill into my muscle memory for my fingers, basically it's wouldn't let me get upset, wouldn't let me cry at a certain stage where it was just oh, okay, it's normal to fail at this. Keep going. Actually try it. Cause I remember eventually I quit piano because I couldn't reach up an octave with my fingers at 12. which is probably shouldn't be expected of a 12-year-old. But yeah, I am very bummed that I don't remember his name. But he was just like this really cool like music teacher dude who used to teach individual lessons at the church nearby, and they taught me a lot of lessons on handling failure with creative and sports endeavors and stuff like that.
Max, what about yourself?
I was fortunate enough for all 4 years of high school to have a choir director / director of the musicals named Mrs. Flanagan. Everyone just called her Flan. She wanted you to call her Flan. And the bar was set so high for everything she did in those classes. And it was just someone who she really loved music and she loved teaching and loved being able to take what the students did and like share it with the world. I got to sing at Carnegie Hall because of her. She arranged choir trips.
That's crazy.
Our musicals were held to such a high standard and such a degree of professionalism. And unfortunately, she passed away a few weeks ago. And the outpouring from former students on social media, I've never seen so many tributes to a teacher, and I've never seen so many people credit a single teacher for why they wanted to pursue academia, why they wanted to pursue arts education, why they wanted to pursue careers in the arts and music. Just seeing the influence and impact that she had on so many students in decades and decades and decades of high school teaching was really inspirational. And definitely my Feeny, and definitely someone who saw me come of age from like a 14-year-old freshman to a senior in high school and all that entails.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to pick one, right? Because
what are you thinking, Geoff?
Yeah, because I have to give a shout out to a few people from middle school and high school. Mr. Malone, my two crew coaches, David Fisher and Stephen Casey. And then a special shout out to Mrs. Santorelli. When I was in high school, I was not the best at biology. And it got to the point where I wasn't allowed to go to crew practice because my biology score was not great. And she literally pulled me aside and she's like, "We're going to do tutoring every Tuesday after school, and we're going to get you to the point." And like, in the end, biology became my favorite course, in all honesty, like, because she was so confident in like finding learning styles and like seeing like, hey, not every student learns the same. In all honesty, she ended up writing my college recommendation letter for a school I did not end up going to, but, got in, and probably, in all honesty, shouldn't have gone in. But like, I still stay in touch with her. It is one of those special things. Like, teachers are amazing. She made me want to be a teacher. It's one of the reasons why I love coaching and fitness, is because it's a gift to be able to teach people things that they don't know or maybe don't come naturally to them. So shout out to all the teachers. Y'all are fucking amazing.
This was an oddly uncharacteristically sweet TVPL in-flight question.
I was just about to say, this is probably the most genuine we've been on in 101 episodes.
We got to hear Geoff talk about how he don't know much about history, don't know much biology.
Oh my god. Well, thank you so much for that in-flight question.
Science book.
We're gonna get canceled if you keep on singing. We cannot afford this. Let's talk a little bit more about the history of this show. So this show had 7 seasons and 158 episodes. You'll notice we did not talk about a certain character by the name of Topanga because she did not show up in this episode.
She missed the filming.
And I think that's all honesty for the better. She was too busy with her future husband finding fake shrimp in Cinnamon Toast Crunch boxes. All right,
you've opened the floodgates. We're talking about Ben Savage's political career.
Let's talk a little bit about the ratings for the show, because even though the show was beloved, it sort of shows the power of TGIF that this show peaked at 37th and 36th on the charts, which, when you hear that, insane for a Friday show. What's even
insane
more
for a show geared towards children.
Yeah, what's even more insane is the viewership numbers, as this show peaked at 11.6 million viewers on average per episode.
Wow.
And that was towards the back end of this show. That wasn't even towards the beginning. That was the second to last season. And to give you an idea, there are like maybe 4 shows that aren't football that average that many viewers on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
It's extremely
Streaming
impressive.
services would be in court battling over this show if they put up those numbers in real time here.
I mean, as far as other things, all of these seasons are on DVD. There's actually a set of all of the seasons in one DVD pack, but I found this on Disney Plus. I'm sure you can also find it on Hulu. As far as awards go, there were 16 nominations for the show and 5 wins, and my favorite was a Nickelodeon's Kid Choice Award for Best Friendship that was won by Ben Savage
was
and
adorable.
Ryder. And I mean, I hope they got Slime to shit. Like that is my number one hope. So
God, we don't name people things like Ryder Strong anymore. Like, you gotta be a TV star with that.
No, everybody's named Apple in Brooklyn now.
Yeah.
Everyone's named like greasers now.
We talked about it a little bit. This show did have a reboot called Girl Meets World that focused on Cory and Topanga's daughter, which you can find on Disney Plus. There is also an entire rewatch podcast hosted by some of the cast that if you are super into Boy Meets World and you want to hear more about it, highly recommend you find that. It is anywhere you listen to podcasts. But that is the history of Boy Meets World. And Rich, it is time for your game of the week.
Damn straight. And don't go listen to another podcast now before you listen to this week's game of the week. Obviously, Geoff, you mentioned the missing piece of this pilot, and that is a character named Topanga. So what does Topanga make you think of? Obviously, the Topanga Mall. Yeah. It's time to admire the beauty of pre-Vietnam American capitalist expansion, a monument to American consumerism, the epicenter of generations of teenage hangouts in the San Fernando Valley, and most importantly, they have a pretty good AMC there. Originally called the Topanga Plaza, it was opened on February 10th, 1964. February 10th, 1964, what a time. Car hops on roller skates, Cassius Clay became Muhammad Ali, and this song was number 1 in the charts on this day. A, The Kingsmen's Louie Louie, Beatles' I Want to Hold Your Hand, Roy Orbison's Pretty Woman, or D, The Animals' House of the Rising Sun. Which song was it? February 10th, 1964.
Go with D, The Animals.
I'm going to go with the Beatles.
It is the Beatles. The Beatles just made their expansion into the U.S. at this particular moment. Geoff, you should know this. What year was Montgomery Ward shuttered in the Topanga Mall because it went out of business? A, in 1985.
Of anyone on this
That's right.
podcast, I should know this.
Yeah, Geoff, what is the parking capacity of the Topanga Mall? What year did Montgomery Ward shutter in Topanga Mall because it went out of business? A, 1985, B, 1993, C, 1998, D, 2001.
So I'm going to show my hand a little bit here. What's Montgomery Ward?
We both know. Geoff and I both know, but in case the audience at home doesn't know.
Montgomery Ward was a department store in the vein of Sears and Macy's and all that good stuff. But yeah, what year did it close? 85, 93, 98, 2001.
I'm going to say 85. Why not? That sounds like a good year.
Going to say 93, the same year as today's pilot.
It was 2001. 2001. Never forget Montgomery Ward going out of business. All right. The mall was first featured on screen in the movie Divorce American Style in 1967. It would then be a setting of 1 hour photo with Robin Williams, a forgettable Apple Store moment in Captain America Winter Soldier, also featured in Parks and Rec and The Last Man on Earth. But back to the first movie, which American comedy legend starred in Divorce American Style? A, Gene Wilder, B, Dick Van Dyke, C, Jimmy Stewart, D, Peter Sellers.
I'm going to say Jimmy Stewart. Why not?
What do you think, Max?
God. Sorry, read it back one more.
Yeah, which American comedy legend starred in Divorce American Style in 1967? A, Gene Wilder, B. Dick Van Dyke, C. Jimmy Stewart, D. Peter Sellers.
Dick Van Dyke.
It is Dick Van Dyke. Very well done.
It was one of two.
And yeah, thank you so much for playing Topanga Mall Trivia.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for
The Pride
that
of Woodland
game.
Hills.
I am so much smarter now having played that game of the week.
That's what people tune in for. It's to
That's
become
why
smarter.
people tune in for the game of the week.
Has
for sure.
a fantastic food court now.
God, does it ever. I can't shut up about the Topanga Mall.
Sponsor us, Topanga Mall. give us a few dollars.
Westfield, you know where to find me.
Let us record in the Westfield Social Court.
We can just go do that. It's just going to be noisy in there.
Oh, God. Well, gentlemen, our flight is coming to a land, but before we go, I want to make sure that we answer two other questions. And that is, one, based off of the pilot and the pilot alone, would you watch more of Boy Meets World? Would you want to see more life lessons of Cory from his parents and Mr. Feeny along the way? And the second one, there's already been a reboot of the show. We're going to leave that alone. There are way too many reboots of these kids shows because millennials can't leave them alone. So instead, I want to know, what are your thoughts on the full family comedy, right? What are your thoughts on the idea of a TGIF TV moment where maybe the entire family can sit down and watch, learn a lesson, and have a laugh along the way? Rich, I'm kicking it off to you.
Personally, I am also on the Go Mets train for the playoffs this year, so I'm going to say no on watching another episode strictly because it's Phillies coded. But I would say I think the full family comedy is still alive and well right now. I think Abbott Elementary proves that. I think the current English teacher proves that. I think I think the world has definitely seen an improvement of the parental characters. Like maybe this goes back to movies like Easy A or something like that. But like cool parents are definitely in. If you watch the show Sex Education, it definitely factors into that.
You are naming things that are very mature compared to what we're talking about, Rich.
I know, but that is the evolution of this. It's like kids are still going to watch Abbott Elementary, even though Abbott Elementary is almost not about the kids at all. It's all staff. So I think that is still going to be. I think that's just the evolution of where we are. It's like there is a. There's like the young kid, like Cocomelon Paw Patrol stage, and then almost immediately, like you're turning 10 or 11 or something like that. We're now advancing into like Modern Family territory. We're in Abbott Elementary. This is like this. That is what family comedy is now.
Max, what about yourself?
Going into this episode, I was prepared to write this off as just a kid's show. I don't have really familiarity with Boy Meets World from my own youth. I was pleasantly surprised, and I would definitely continue watching it. And I would encourage anyone who maybe thinks of this as just a thing from syndication on Disney to watch it with a different lens, because it's quite enjoyable.
Right.
I'm gonna argue, Rich. I think that the family comedy has died in America. I do not think that we make feature films like Disney's The Kid or Matilda anymore. There are either youth-oriented things, which now seem to only be animated. We have just eliminated the ability for child actors and family-told stories on film.
For good reason. The child actor thing for good reason.
Yeah, labor laws. Okay.
Yeah.
Or we're in the teen and up coded category. I think that there are still plenty of things that are teen-driven and young adult-driven. YA has certainly never been bigger, but I don't think we have family-valued, like, bright orchestral string kind of stuff that we had so much of throughout the 90s and early 2000s. And I love this stuff. I love this stuff so much. I don't think it's coming back. I think we've just skewed so far into different directions, and we're just pumping these kids now full of animated sequels and IP and saying that it's good enough for them, or it's the hyper-stimulated youth shows. I wish that wasn't the case, but I just don't think a thing like Boy Meets World could find an audience in 2024.
All right. So, as far as myself,
Geoff
I
had to wind
definitely-
up for this one.
I was trying to put my words together because I want to be very careful when I say this. I definitely would watch more of this show. I think that this show is so unique. And to go on what you're saying, Max, I think that the family TV show has died due to a dilution made possible because of choice. We have a lot of choices of what to watch. You can just stick an iPad, I don't know if that's a good choice, in front of your child with Cocomelon on it, if they are under a certain age. And if they are of a different age, you can then put something else in front of them that's a little bit more age appropriate. While I say that there is not the need for a family TV show because of that choice, that does not mean that we shouldn't have that available to us. There is something about TV of the 90s and TGIF TV that is so beloved by many generations because it is so unoffensive. Everyone can sit down and watch it. It is, while there's slight morals, it's not trying to be holier than thou at the same time. And that there's something to be said about that. Maybe if we had fewer streaming programs, we'd see more family TV. But if I'm a executive, I'd love to try to reignite this while not falling into the trap of, oh, well, we're rebooting it so the millennials will come. Or we're going to bring in this TikTok person so that the Gen Z will come or the Gen Alphas will come.
Right.
We need to look at this from, why not make good TV where we're checking everyone's boxes and it's super easy to have someone, especially an advertiser, say, we want to put dollars behind that because it hits everyone. Food for thought, but I think that there definitely is a space for this because right now we are on complete ends of the spectrum with really this valley in the middle of nothingness.
Oh, you want to talk about the Valley? I just did for an entire trivia question.
But with our plane landed and this episode of TV Pilots License at a Land, I want to make sure that folks can find the two of you. Rich, where can folks find you?
You can find me meeting the Mets, and also you can find me on Instagram at Damn That's Rich, and you can find original sketch comedy for Max and myself at Dadwagon Comedy on TikTok.
Max?
You can find me running against Ben Savage for city council, and you can find he ran for WeHo city council, then he ran for the Democratic congressional seat.
Good on him. That's great.
You can find me on all things social media.
But there wasn't a seat for him because it wasn't it was a full house.
Oh, God. You can find me on all things social media at Maxwell Sig. Hate you.
You can find me hosting an imaginary tea party. Yes, we have plenty of ketchup, don't you worry. But if you are looking for me on social media, you can find me at Run Geoff Run. If you're looking for the TV Pilots License anywhere you listen to, you can find me on social media at Run Geoff Run. You can find the TV Pilots License anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also watch our smiling faces on YouTube. If you want to leave a question for the podcast, maybe an in-flight question, you can always shoot us an email at tvpilotslicense@gmail.com, or you can give us a call at 213-290-1713. If you want to be a frequent flyer to the program, make sure to follow us anywhere that you get your information. Maybe we'll have some new stuff coming out as well very soon. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you again soon. And until then, meet the Mets.
Meet the Mets. Meet the Mets.
No more. You can't sing it. No, stop.
The Mets.